Hi, and welcome to our sixth installment of One-on-One with Broadway director, choreographer, and Tony nominee, Larry Fuller.
Hello there, Facebook musical theater lovers. Now, last week, I believe I finished with And Then I Met Hal Prince, of all places in Vienna, both working at the Theater an der Wien, which I did tell you about. And I had done that dance piece in Graz, Austria, called Jazz the Dancing Americans. And the intendant, as they call him over there, artistic director, I think would be what he'd be called here, of the Theater an der Wien, saw it and bought it for his theater in Vienna. And so George Martin, who was an old, long-time friend of mine, had been the production stage manager on A Little Night Music, the original, and he came to Vienna to restage it exactly as it was in New York, only in German. And so we had a nice reunion. It was good to see an old friend, be working in the same theater. He was rehearsing on the stage downstairs, and I was rehearsing in the big rehearsal hall upstairs with 26 dancers that the theater had signed to them. And they had nothing to do in A Little Night Music. Obviously, there's no dancing in it, if you know the show. So my Jazz the Dancing Americans was to play on the dark night, which was Sunday. So they would play A Little Night Music 6 nights a week and 2 matinees, and then we'd do one performance of my jazz dance, and every Sunday night. And as I think I already said, I was Tommy tuning myself, and I was in it so that the audience would get to know who Larry Fuller is, as opposed to just a name on a program. It helped to get me known in Austria and Germany. And so when the last couple of weeks before Night Music opened at Theater an der Wien, Hal Prince came over to put the finishing touches on it during previews and tech and all that, and be there for the opening, the premiere, as they call it in Europe. And during those 2 weeks or so, working in the same theater, seeing each other all the time in the cantina, whereas I don't know if I told you, but every opera house or theater of any size in Europe has a cantina. And they serve hot food, cold food, beverages of all description, even alcohol. And so if you're there rehearsing, you go down to the canteen and have lunch. And so Hal and I got to know each other over a lunch table a little bit. Then he asked why don't we go out for dinner? And we did a couple of times, and we got very friendly. We're both Aquarians, and so we have very similar personality traits. And so A Little Night Music opened, he left, and Jazz the Dancing Americans opened, and the reviews were really nice, so I had a couple of them translated and sent to him. And he always corresponded regularly. Hal was known for that. I mean, anybody, if you sent him a note or something, he would always reply. And so we were kind of corresponding over the seas, and some time went by, and I got a letter one day telling me that they were going to do Candide in Vienna, and his production that had played BAM and the Broadway Theater was the street theater version of Candide, with 8 different playing areas and boardwalks going from one to the other and so on. And it was really a delightful concept for that show. And I remember seeing it once, in New York. And so I got this letter saying a producer in Vienna had bought the sets and costumes from that production and was going to produce it in Vienna at the Stadthalle, which was like their Madison Square Garden. They were going to get his set and put a tent over it, like a circus tent, inside the Stadthalle. So it was very kind of merry and frolicky. Also perfectly stylistically good for the show. So he asked me in this letter to be the casting director. Well, I was just thrilled. I was over the moon that he would trust me to do that. So I got on the phone right away and called the Hal Prince office in New York. And I was told that, he told me that, well, since you know the talent market there better than anybody I know, I think you'd do a good job at casting it. And I said, well, geez, that's great, okay. So not very long after that, the producer informed me that Mr. Prince was going to be in London, actually casting a production of Candide for the West End, and that he wanted me to come to London for a couple of days to sit in on auditions to just so I had a really good idea how he liked it cast. So I got to go to London, all expenses paid. I got to stay at the Savoy, and I sat in with Hal a couple of days on the auditions. And the first day, I didn't say much of anything. I just was, a silent observer. But then the second day, I thought, well, if I don't say something, how will I know if what I'm thinking is going along with what he's thinking as far as who's right for what part? So I started speaking up, not boldly, but just saying, well, I think, or don't you think, or whatever. And we always seemed to agree, so that was good. And then after the second day had finished, Hal said, I'd like to take you to dinner. And so we were having dinner, just the two of us, and talking about the show a bit. And then he said, I think you should direct this. Well, I dropped my fork. I could not believe he was asking me to direct Candide in German, Voltaire in German. So I said, well, I'm overwhelmed that you would trust me with that. And, I've only seen the show once, your production, this production, and it's vividly in my mind because it was so unique and so terrific. But I wouldn't be able to recreate your staging ever. And he said, oh, well, I have a casting, a blocking script, which I will copy for you, and I will go over it with you. And as long as each scene is on one of whichever of the 8 playing areas that it took place on, I want that to happen. And I will go over the kind of what I think should be brought out in each scene. And you can just go, do your own. And I said, wow. Ooh. And then I said, but there's two things I want to talk to you about before I say absolutely yes. And he was quite surprised, I think. And he said, oh, what? And I said, well, George Martin, who was the original production stage manager of Candide as well, that version anyway, I said, he's really a longtime friend of mine, and by the theater right, it should be his show to do. And Hal said, well, don't worry about that, because all of the people that worked with me on it, Patty Birch, choreographer, the writers, everybody is at that time will be working with me in New York on creating Pacific Overtures, which is our next show. And so none of them will be available. So I think you could do a great job. And I went, oh, well, okay. And the other point I had to make was about not knowing the show as well as enough to really do his original version, and him saying, okay, I'll give you the blocking script and so on. So we had a deal by the time we left the restaurant, and when I got back to Vienna, I was the director, choreographer of Candide in Vienna. And so I started casting, and it came about that time that the movie of A Little Night Music, which was supposed to have been done out of Munich by Bayerischer Film, was the film company in Munich pulled their money out and said they weren't going to do it. So Hal had been in Europe quite a lot, traveling around looking for locations and so on prior to that, and sometimes I'd actually meet up with him. But the point was that it was dead in the water for a bit, and then Wien Film, as in Vienna Film, made an offer to make up the difference in the budget. I don't know, is it like $3 million or something? And if they would do it out of Vienna. And so Hal said, yeah, great, sure, I love Vienna. And the locations there were really quite good. So, because Vienna hadn't been bombed so badly during World War II, so there were many, many still ground houses that weren't being lived in, but they still existed. So a lot of the film was shot in the interiors of these old mansions. Anyway, it turned out that because the film had been postponed for several months, that Patricia Birch, Patty Birch, who was the original choreographer and was justifiably going to do the film, well, there's no dancing really in Candide. There's a little romping around, and some very physical staging, but not really dancing. And Hal said, well, you know, Patty can only stay the first 3 weeks of our schedule, which is when we're going to be rehearsing at the Theater an der Wien. And I think you should be her assistant and learn what she's putting up. And then when she leaves, you can help put that on film. And stay around for the whole film, because we'll need you now and then to help with movement problems. And I said, oh, I'd love to do that, but I mean, do you think Patty will just agree? And he said, oh, she'll be fine. She knows you guys, and so on. So anyway, I got pushed onto her as her assistant, and I certainly wore my assistant hat. When Elizabeth Taylor arrived for rehearsal in Vienna, she had a few days before evidently been in the Hamptons on the back of some guy's motorcycle, which turned over and burned all of the wheel, took the skin off the inside of one of her thighs. So she had a skin graft on one of her thighs, and she couldn't get up and waltz around the stage, really. So she sat there and watched for about 2 weeks. And she had this cardboard box that found for her. She'd sit in a chair and put her bad leg up on a cardboard box in heels, because she couldn't put her heel down. Anyway, one day we were rehearsing, she was watching, It was what had happened was that Steve Sondheim had put lyrics to the original night music waltz, which became a song known as "Love Takes Time," and there were kind of couplets and roundelays for each character to sing about who they are and more or less what they want. So there were lots of little, not so intricate waltz patterns where they'd waltz around each other and with each other and so on. And she was watching us stage it with her dance double. And she had a thermos that she carried with her all the time. And she opened it and poured a cup of her thermos. And she said, "Hey, everybody, come on, have a drink, have a drink." So, just out of curiosity, I said, "Oh, thank you, Elizabeth." So, nobody ever called her Liz. That's never, never. And so I took the cup and I took a swallow of it. It was warm vodka with a little bit of orange juice to color it. I mean, it was icky. But that's what she carried around in her thermos to rehearsals. And she was just starting to get heavy. That was the first film she did where she was getting fat. And so the last week of the three, the third week, she was up on her feet. The first day that we rehearsed with her on her feet, she had a waltz pattern. It was very simple. It was just waltzing towards Lynn Carreyrou, her leading man. And the stage, because there was no show in there, it was just plain old masonite, 4x8 pieces of masonite nailed to the floor. And there was a seam, evidently, where one of the masonite pieces didn't exactly fit the other one. And guess what? She stubbed her toe and broke it. So she couldn't rehearse anymore. And it was just, I mean, talk about Elizabeth Taylor and accident prone. So her double had to do more than we had originally anticipated. But actually, when we saw the dailies, you couldn't tell the difference. So it was fine. And her broken toe got okay enough for her to stand on it. The first day of shooting, we Hal had arranged to have several hundred extras in period costume and hairdo to be coming into the theater, which was the Théâtre en Vigne, to see, in great anticipation, to see Desiree Armfeld on stage. And so he had all these extras out in front, trying to organize them to, you know, get in and get seated and so on. And Elizabeth had been called to have hair and makeup because he wanted to get a establishing shot at the end of the day in costume for the people, Elizabeth and Lynn and Hermione Gingold and Diana Rigg and all these terrific people that were in the film. By the way, I was in heaven. I mean, I had never made so much money per week in my life. And I was working with all those people I just named. I mean, it was really thrilling. Patty was gone by then, and Elizabeth came in the early afternoon, and she was sitting in just a plain old bentwood chair on stage by herself in work light with the producer, who was Elliot Kastner, very well-known film producer, and came into my life later in a big way. But anyway, he was talking to her, keeping her calmed down and so on. And the longer she sat, because I was not out front with Ruth Mitchell and Hal directing the extras, they were doing that. I was backstage, and I kept also trying to talk a little and keep her calm. And the longer she waited, the more upset she got. When did I get my God in this goddamn hair and all this fucking makeup? I mean, come on. Why am I here? So I would run out front every once in a while as time went on, and she got more and more and more agitated. And I kept telling Ruth Mitchell, Hal's associate, Ruth, you have got to get Hal to come backstage and talk to Elizabeth Taylor and let her go, because she is about to explode. And if that happens, he'll lose her. I mean, there won't be any good relationship for the rest of the film. And so he did. He came back. And he talked to her very briefly, very kindly, and that's all she needed. She was fine. She went back to her hotel. And once we got into the actual filming of the opening number, Love Takes Time, on the stage, all the costumes that Florence Klotz, great costume designer, had done were from the skin out, period. They had bloomers and corsets and camisoles and all that underneath the dresses. And Elizabeth took, we were filming, and we took lunch break, a couple hours, I think. And she went to her dressing room to have lunch, so she took off all of her corsets and things. And I mean, I didn't see that, but I found that out later. And I went to the stage door, and I was standing there thinking, oh, now where will I go? I don't want to go to the cantina. I want to go somewhere outside of the theater. And as I was standing there thinking about that, 6 liveried servers, butler types, came in carrying, each one had a full platter covered with a silver dome, one each, carrying it. This went by, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I remember that because I counted them as they went by. I thought, what the hell? And I said to the stage doorman, what was that? And he said, oh, that's Miss Taylor's lunch. Well, after lunch, I mean, I'm sure she didn't eat everything on every platter, but she probably a little of this, a little of that, a little of this. Well, after lunch, she couldn't get back into the corset. This I did see, because the dressing room door was open, and they got 2, her dressers couldn't get it closed, so they got 2 stage crew men, and they came in, and each one took a string and pulled and pulled and pulled until the corset was tight enough to get the dress over. So that was the first lesson in Elizabeth Taylor's weight going up and down and up and down, and it did the whole time we were filming. And we'll get to that a little later too. There was another disaster about that. But so we went on, and we filmed, and I was, once in a while, I was able to do something that was helpful, such as the day that we were shooting in Schönbrunn, which is the Winter Palace. I mean, the Summer Palace. The Summer Palace is outside the city. And there is a little Baroque theater there, like maybe 400 seats, but beautifully Baroque theater. And that's where we were filming a scene where Desiree was supposed to be performing somewhere on the road, and there was a little set, and she came out through, she was to make an entrance as Desiree through 2 French doors into a garden scene, which wasn't very big because it was a small stage, and she had to come down 2 or 3 steps and greet people. And she wasn't feeling good at all that day. She had like the flu or a terrible cough or something. She really felt like shit. And so I watched the rehearsal, and she came out of the door and kind of, because Elizabeth Taylor had these little kind of peasanty hands, and she was not naturally graceful. And so I thought, oh boy, I got to do something about that. So after they blocked the scene, and they sent the actors, to their dressing rooms until they lit and put the camera where it had to be and so on. And I went back to her dressing room, And I said, you know, Elizabeth, that entrance you're making, you have to think of being Makarova or, you know, a great ballerina making an entrance and just floating down the steps and so on. And she said, oh, okay. So she did it. I mean, she was two-take Tessie. She only did like 2, maybe 3 takes tops. That's all she did because she knew exactly what she was doing. So she'd done it all her life. So it wasn't into, you know, 12, 20 takes. It was on 2 or 3 at the most. And I know Hal said, oh, I don't know if the what we got today on film is going to be any good, because she looked terrible. She really felt bad, and I'm afraid it's going to show on camera. And I said, oh, Hal, I was looking at her with a real magnified focus to see what was happening the minute she'd come onto camera. And I said, you wait and see. When she came on, she was Elizabeth Taylor, Desiree. She wasn't some old sick actress. So the next day we saw the dailies, or that night, I can't remember, and he said, sure as hell, she looks great. So we didn't have to go back to that location. And I think my, so to speak, last of the stories about Elizabeth Taylor, and that was, it was towards the end of the film that she was officially engaged to John Warner, the senator from Virginia. And he had sent her a red, white, and blue engagement ring, diamond, sapphire, ruby. And she was just flashing it around like she was some girl that just got engaged for the first time. She was so thrilled. And we got to the last of the scenes, the night of when everything transpires and comes together and falls apart. And she was in what is well known as the red dress, which was a beaded silk chiffon, rather tight-fitting dress. That was the style of the period. And it had a neckline that was a décolletage, but it was cut square. And so they got, I don't know, a couple of days into filming in that costume, and then it was time, I think, to film Cindy and the Clowns, which of course was all her. But whatever she'd eaten or drank or whatever the night before, her boobs were pushing against the costume, and it was cutting right into her breasts. And on camera, it didn't work. So I remember Florence Glotz saying, oh, I knew I should have had 2 of each, because Irene Sheriff told me in Cleopatra she was always going up and down like a balloon. So they sent to London to have a new red dress made and shot around Elizabeth for 2 days. And it was there in 2 days. And as the old saying goes, 1,000 nuns went blind, because all those beads were sewn on there by hand, and they were all over the dress. Wow. So anyway, we finished up, and we had a, oh yes, I had some sort of a party for the crew and the people on the show, in the film, the actors, whatever. And I think it was my birthday, I don't remember really, but she sent me a telegram, a birthday telegram, which I still have. And that is, I'm sure, part of her old studio training. Treat the people around you that are making you look good, treat them good, because that's who makes you look good. And so I was thrilled to get it. Anyway, what was it? Oh yes, the wrap party after the film was done was on 2 trolley cars that went all the way around the old part of Vienna. It was called the Circle, and the wrap party was on those. And they would stop once in a while, and you could get off one and get on the other if you wanted. Like, One was had the food and the drink and so on. The other one had a dance area, and they both had piped-in music. So Elizabeth and I were on this one where you could get up and dance. So I said, Elizabeth, would you like to dance? And she said, oh, sure. So it was a rock kind of thing. So we're, kind of doing a limp twist and a little wiggle now and then. And I remember her saying, oh, baby, I've got to get this out of my system now, because when I go to Virginia, I can't do this. It was really fun. And so that was Elizabeth Taylor on that film. And so the film was over. During the filming, by the way, Hal got a pair of audio cassettes. And he said, Larry, these are from the guys that wrote Jesus Christ Superstar. And they've come up with a show about Eva Perón, the dictator in South America. And they've sent it to me, and they want to know if I'm interested in directing it. I said, oh, well, that sounds interesting. I mean, I remembered Eva Perón from when I was a little bitty kid in a newsreel or something. And so he gave me the cassettes, and he said, I want you to listen to them and tell me what you think. Well, again, I thought, oh my God, he really is, he's interested in my opinion. So I listened to them. It was the original concept album with Colin, I can't remember, Colin sang Che, and Julie, somebody sang Ava. Anyway, none of them ended up in the cast, but it was, it was a beautiful recording, well sung, and it was very political, obviously, and Hal Prince loved political theater. I mean, he was just really neck deep in Brecht and all that. He just loved that stuff. So I said, Hal, I like it, but it would take a very special director to pull it off and make it an entertaining piece of stage, musical, because it certainly isn't anything like you've ever seen before. And he said, and I said, if you did it, I think it could work. And he said, okay, fine. And that was that. Never thinking in my wildest dreams that I would be involved in it. So we finished, as we said, we finished the film, and everybody went away. And, well, I've just been given a sign that I have 2 minutes left. So I'll get to it. I don't remember exactly how long it was. I was doing shows around Germany in opera houses. I did On the Town, which was quite successful, and Girl Crazy, and a couple of West Side Story again. I was in actually taking, and I was sending Hal the reviews, of course, because they were good. And I was in Copenhagen, of all places, just taking a little holiday and seeing other parts of Europe. And I was in a pension, which is like a big boarding house. You don't have a phone in your room. You don't have a bathroom in your room. And I got this knock on the door. It said, Mr. Fuller, you're wanted on the phone. So I went to the desk or whatever, wherever that phone was. It was a public phone, more or less. It was Hal. How the hell he found me, I have no idea, but he did. And we were talking and and he said, oh, Larry, I'm doing a new musical called On the 20th Century. It's written by Comden and Green and Cy Coleman, and I would like you to be the choreographer. Well, I almost dropped the phone. I mean, I was what? Another surprise. But you know, all these things that happened when I met Hal, and I had Candide, and then I had Little Night Music, and it was just luck. I had such great luck, because who would ever have thought to go to Vienna, where I was developing quite a nice career, and I was going to stay in Europe and form my own musical repertory company, and then eventually get Germans to write original musicals. And then Hal beckoned me back to Broadway, and so I went. And I guess that's it for now. Next is On the 20th Century.
Great. So this is a good time. If you have any questions, this is a good time to ask.
I have a question. The casting of Elizabeth Taylor, was that a studio idea, or was that original Hal Prince idea? Did he want her from the beginning?
I'm not sure who wanted Elizabeth at the beginning. I think Hal was certainly enthusiastic about it because he knew that if she was in it, it would sell. However, it didn't. It only lasted about 2 weeks on the market. The film itself, when I saw it only twice. There was a premiere thing at Lincoln Center at Avery Fisher Hall, which I went to, and then I saw it again when I went to visit a relative in St. Louis or somewhere, and it was in an art house. And the film was just fine until you got to about the last 15 minutes, and then something just went haywire. It just started not working, and it kind of spiraled into bloop. So I think that's probably why it was not successful. And Hal, after all, as great a talent as he is, was not truly a film director. He'd only done one other film with, what was the name of it?
Trouble with Sheila, something like that?
Was what?
The Trouble with Sheila, is that it?
No, it was something with Angela Lansbury and, I can see him, but I can't think of his name. Blonde, big star English actor at the time. Anyway, it was a very unusual film because it dealt with homosexuality before its time, so to speak. So this was his second big film. And as I said, it worked great until about the last 15 minutes, and then it fell apart.
Well, Lee Stone, who's watching, says that your career was not just luck, she's thinking. She says, thank you so much, and applause, hands, and hearts to you.
Well, thank you, Lee. But you know, I have known several extremely talented people through my years in the business who just didn't get the luck. They didn't get the right part at the right time. And then they get past their prime and it's too late. And I just happened to be one of the ones that I was ready for it, but it was luck, a lot of it. I mean, if it hadn't been that Hal Prince and I were both working in the same theater in Vienna, which who could have planned that, I wouldn't have started working with him because I couldn't get my foot in his door in New York. I tried. Anything else?
There's nothing else there. All right, well, we're going to wrap up then. And we'll be back on Thursday of this week, 2 o'clock Pacific Standard Time here on Ray's Facebook page. And we'll continue on with with this incredibly interesting and entertaining career.
Well, a few anecdotes that, you know, as the song says, I was in the room, or what the proper title is, in the room where it happened. That's it. Till Thursday.
We'll see you guys on Thursday. Thanks.